what I want to talk about today is what really moves the needle. So we hear a lot of hype, a lot of superstition. Most entrepreneurship is anecdotal, and I want to try to bring some reason or rationale to that on what really moves the economic needle for us here in Jacksonville, Northeast Florida. Specifically, what entrepreneurial activities make a difference, where should we focus, and then talk about corporate venturing and investment and how that plays into what we want to do in terms of the ecosystem, government policies, and a little bit about workforce. So what do we need to do to really make an impact and be prosperous? So first starts out with who is the entrepreneur? Our obsession with unicorn startups and celebrity entrepreneurs is probably extremely misleading and counterproductive. So I'll say we have to really reverse that first course. Knowing what Elon Musk ate for breakfast, what Bill Gates books he likes to read, or Jeff Bezos, his workout routine is meaningless. But we focus a lot of attention in entrepreneurship on these celebrity entrepreneurs. It's very counterproductive. Most of what we learn from them is revisionist history, it's marketing spin, and it's biased by hindsight. So it's not very useful. When we look at it, 96% of all new ventures fail. And that's coming from the Kaufman Index of Entrepreneur Activity. So we're talking anything that is one employer or more new ventures defined. So large majority of them fail. And this is probably what most entrepreneurship, the archetypes look like, not like the previous slide. So this is what we should think about when we talk about entrepreneurship. We must move beyond lone entrepreneurs and the celebrity startup, unicorn startup as our philosophy. So my study, my research as an academic researcher is on econometrics of entrepreneurship. So I'm going to talk to you real briefly about some of my findings in my research. So I did a 10-year panel study between 2008 and 2018 of what actually impacts economic outcomes or benefits, specifically gross state product, household income, and per capita income at the state level across the U.S. And we considered all the entrepreneurial activities, educational, socioeconomic factors as well that went into this study. And what did we find? So I'll skip all the math from you and the p-values, etc. We find that high growth, early stage high growth companies, these are companies that grow on average 20% compound annual growth for at least 3 years, actually move the needle and impact the local economies and where they operate. It has a real benefit to the people, the communities where they live. Number two, Main Street business. So businesses, small businesses that survive and thrive for at least 5 years also have a significant economic impact for their communities, specifically here in Northeast Florida. And lastly, education. So what we found is the more bachelor degrees, the accumulation or achievement of bachelor degrees in a local community have a direct economic impact and fund and power the businesses in our communities. Those three things really move the needle, and that's where we should focus for our ecosystem for entrepreneurship. The rate of new startups, the rate of entrepreneurs, a lot of the incubator type stuff actually is not statistically significant. So what we find is a lot of that activity we think of in terms of entrepreneurship actually doesn't really have an economic impact. Most of it's theater. From a corporate standpoint, McKinsey did a study, 20-year study on top performers in the S&P, and they divided it up into who are the top performers. And what they found is the top performers in the S&P over that 20-year time frame did a few things extremely well. The top two were strong programmatic mergers and acquisitions or acquisitions, so strategic investments in early stage companies, and above average investment in new organic growth opportunities, so strategic initiatives. So they're investing in their own products, services, or acquiring or investing and taking an equity position in early stage companies. Those two things put the companies that do it extremely well are in the top 20% of all the S&P and tend to stay there for a long period of time. Prior to joining JU, I was a portfolio manager for what is known as the world's largest serial acquirer, Constellation Software. And I did M&A, and I also ran corporate innovation for 5 years for the company. So I took the McKinsey study and then applied it to our own portfolio, my own portfolio of businesses, 54 autonomous businesses that range anywhere from $5 to $50 million in net revenue, which is probably more appropriate for what we're talking about today in the Jacksonville community. Businesses in between, private companies in between that 5 to 15 million are probably a sweet spot for Jacksonville when we talk about our ecosystem and startups. And what did we find? So this is a little complex, but we really looked at all the business portfolios, where the investment was going and where we were getting the returns. And interesting enough, we could actually make much better bets to improve our outcomes if we moved from most of the investment went into out of necessity. So the businesses that were struggling, that weren't performing or weren't organically growing, maybe contracting, were spending more money. And some of it, I would say, was probably more acts of desperation or Hail Mary passes than sound financial, rational investments. So we wanted to carve that back and move to more what we'd say viability. How do we incent businesses that are doing extremely well or better than average, right? Who are top performers, who have the free cash flow and the resources to invest into that H2 horizon, that next initiative? How do we incent them? So how do we move from necessity to viability? That was something we really structured, and the data called it out and confirmed what McKinsey found in doing a few things very well paid off for our businesses that were in the best position to take advantage of strategic investments or strategic acquisitions to further grow their business and improve their position and move into a top tier of performance. So the numbers are sort of look like this from the McKinsey study. If you do nothing, you have a 14% chance of moving into the bottom. If you do take some action, you have about an 8% chance to move up one quartile over your competitor. So you're twice as likely to move down as you are what? Move up. And most of the businesses, regardless of what they do, sort of stay at the status quo where they're at. So you can't go from the bottom to the top. So how did we take my portfolio and actually improve our results overall on a portfolio basis? A couple of things we called out from this study. Number one, I was able to move 60% of the portfolio up at least one quartile in performance by focusing on the strategic initiatives, placing bigger bets, more targeted investment in terms of acquisition or organic growth initiatives for the businesses that were well positioned. Number one. Number two is the poor performing businesses, we stopped the Hail Mary passes and the acts of desperation. No one will tell you you have an ugly baby. Right? So my job as a portfolio manager was to say, guess what? Your business is an ugly baby. I'm sorry, Don, but you're in the penalty box. You can't buy a company. You can't invest in a strategic initiative because you don't have enough free cash flow. It'll starve for resources. Fix your ugly baby business first. Now you can rejoin the flock and invest in strategic initiatives, invest in strategic acquisitions. Does that make sense? So we kept the ugly babies in the penalty box, and the result was, on average, you saw the previous slide was 8%, your probability moving up. We tripled that. 3 times better performance for moving our businesses from where they were in that quartile, moving them up at a quartile. Our average returns went up to, I was doing 32% IRR at about 48% EBITDA on the portfolio. I had some wind at my back. We're in the public sector, utility industry, so there are some things there. But overall, very strong returns sustained over a 5-year period by taking some very practical, targeted actions at the portfolio level. We could apply these same principles to what we do here in the Jacksonville ecosystem by getting our corporate partners to invest in some of these strategic companies and help us develop these high growth businesses that really move the needle on our local economy. So the key takeaways, it's not the quantity, but it's the type of entrepreneurial activity we invest in that makes the difference, okay? Accelerating these high growth businesses. Again, businesses can grow 20% CAGR for at least 3 years, really move the needle. And helping Main Street businesses survive and thrive for at least 5 years. Explain about 32% of the variation in the gross state product, which is significant. That's a big move. We can move the needle a lot here in Northeast Florida. We have 1,000 people a day move to Florida, right? So we're getting the talent and we're producing, powering the companies that we want to develop here with those resources. Corporate investments, larger, more bolder strategic investments, either in targeted acquisitions or in targeted R&D investment for new products, new services, or startups, joint ventures, that type of function, actually has a significant economic impact and is accretive at the state level or in Northeast Florida. And higher education and pro-business policy, specifically labor freedoms, minimum wage flexibility, and a restriction of government spending is quite accretive. And it really powers those local businesses to be successful and return the returns we want to our local economy in terms of jobs, in terms to wages, as well as the tax base. So those things really power and move our economy. Today's entrepreneurial practice is significantly biased by hindsight, and we must move beyond startup activity and lone entrepreneurs as success measures. So quit following Elon Musk on Twitter, quit reading Bill Gates' suggested reading list. It's not going to help you. Focus on your business, fix your ugly baby, and be prosperous. Thank you.